The city never truly sleeps, but it does change faces when the sun goes down. The daytime hustle fades into something quieter, something heavier, where the streetlights cast long shadows, and the few people you see are either heading home from late shifts or have nowhere else to go. Marcus knew this rhythm better than most. For 7 years, he'd walked these same blocks as a night security guard for a cluster of warehouses on the industrial edge of town, where the neighborhood thinned out into vacant lots and chain-link fences. His shift ran from 10 at night until 6 in the morning, 8 hours of watching, waiting, and mostly being alone with his thoughts. Marcus was 43, though people often told him he looked older. The lines around his eyes had deepened from squinting into darkness and the weight of too many solitary nights. He'd never married, never had kids. There had been someone once, years back, but she'd wanted more than he knew how to give, and eventually she'd left. Since then, his life had settled into a comfortable, if lonely, routine. Work, sleep, a few errands, maybe a beer at the corner bar on his day off where he'd nod at familiar faces without really talking to anyone. It wasn't a bad life, exactly. It just wasn't much of one. The night it all started was a Thursday in late October, the kind of evening where autumn finally admitted it was giving way to winter. The temperature had dropped enough that Marcus could see his breath, and he'd zipped his jacket all the way up as he made his rounds through the warehouse complex. Everything was quiet, as usual. He checked the locks, signed his log, spent an hour in the small guard booth reading a thriller novel he'd picked up at a thrift store. Around 3 in the morning, when the city felt most abandoned, he stepped outside for some air and to stretch his legs. That's when he first noticed the cat. It was sitting under one of the loading dock overhangs about 20 feet away, a small gray tabby with white patches on its chest and paws. Its eyes caught the light from the overhead bulb, glowing green in the darkness. Marcus had seen stray cats around the warehouses before. This part of town had plenty of them, scrounging through dumpsters and sleeping in whatever shelter they could find. He usually ignored them, but this one was staring right at him, not moving, just watching. Marcus turned and walked back toward the booth. When he glanced over his shoulder, the cat was following him, keeping its distance but definitely tracking his movements. He stopped. The cat stopped. He took a few more steps. The cat followed. Something about it struck him as odd, the way it seemed focused, purposeful, not skittish like most strays. But he had work to do, and he wasn't about to start feeding random animals. He went back inside the booth, and after a while, when he looked out the window, the cat was gone. The next night, the cat was there again. Same spot under the loading dock, same watchful stare. This time, when Marcus walked past, the cat stood up and followed him more closely, staying about 10 feet behind as he made his rounds. Marcus tried to shoo it away, waving his arms and making a hissing sound, but the cat just sat down and waited. When Marcus moved on, it followed again. By the end of his shift, the cat had shadowed him through every inspection, every patrol, keeping its distance, but never leaving. On the third night, Marcus brought a can of tuna from home. He told himself he just wanted to get a closer look, see if the cat was injured or sick. He opened the can during his break and set it on the ground near the booth. The cat approached slowly, cautiously, sniffing the air. It ate quickly, hungrily, glancing up at Marcus between bites as if expecting him to snatch the food away. When it finished, it sat there for a moment, then walked over and rubbed against Marcus's boot. The touch was so light, so tentative, that Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He reached down carefully and let the cat sniff his fingers. After a moment, it allowed him to scratch behind its ears. The cat was thin, its fur matted in places, but it didn't seem feral. It was too trusting for that. Marcus started bringing food every night. Gradually, the cat began to relax around him, even jumping up onto the desk in the booth and curling up while Marcus did his paperwork. He named it Scout, though he wasn't sure why that name came to him. Maybe because the cat seemed like it was on a mission, always alert, always watching. Over the next 2 weeks, Scout became a fixture of Marcus's nights. The cat would be waiting when he arrived for his shift and would follow him until he left in the morning. Marcus found himself looking forward to seeing Scout, talking to it the way people talk to pets when no one else is around. It was nice, having company. One night in mid-November, Marcus was petting Scout when he felt something unusual under the matted fur around its neck. A collar. He carefully parted the fur and found a worn leather collar, so dirty and embedded in the cat's coat that he hadn't noticed it before. Attached to it was a small metal tag, scratched and tarnished with age. Marcus turned the tag toward the light and squinted at the engraving. The name on it wasn't Scout. It said Whiskers. Below that, partially worn away but still readable, was a phone number and what looked like an address, or at least part of one. The numbers were faded, but Marcus could make out most of them. He sat back, the tag still in his fingers, and Scout, or Whiskers, looked up at him with those green eyes. Where had this cat come from? How long had it been wearing this collar, wandering these streets? Marcus felt a strange pull of curiosity, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He took out his phone and carefully typed the phone number into his notes, then photographed the tag. The address was harder to read. It looked like it said something ending in Apartment 7, but the street name was almost completely worn off. He could make out what might be Oak or Park at the beginning. The next morning, after his shift ended and the gray dawn light was creeping over the warehouses, Marcus sat in his truck in the parking lot and stared at the phone number. It was probably disconnected by now, or it would belong to someone who had no idea what he was talking about. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he should try. He dialed the number. It rang 4 times, then went to a generic voicemail. No name, no message, just the automated prompt. Marcus hung up without leaving anything. Over the next few days, Marcus became quietly obsessed with the tag. He tried the number at different times, hoping someone might pick up, but it always went to voicemail. He started paying more attention to his surroundings during his drive to and from work, looking for streets that might match the partial address. There were 3 streets in the area that started with Oak and 2 with Park. He wrote them all down. During his lunch breaks, he started driving through those neighborhoods, looking at the buildings, trying to imagine where a cat named Whiskers might have lived. The area was run down, the kind of neighborhood where people worked hard just to keep their heads above water. Cracked sidewalks, buildings with peeling paint, corner stores with barred windows. Marcus had grown up in a place like this, a few towns over, before he'd moved to the city for work. He recognized the look in people's eyes here, that mix of exhaustion and determination. These were people who'd been forgotten by everyone except the landlords who came to collect rent. On a Saturday afternoon, Marcus found himself walking down Oak Street, looking at the apartment buildings. Most of them were 3 or 4 stories, old brick structures with narrow windows and rusty fire escapes. He felt foolish, wandering around with a photo of a cat collar on his phone, but he kept going. At the corner of Oak and 5th, there was a building that looked more neglected than the others. The front door was propped open with a brick, and the lobby was dark even in the middle of the day. A handwritten sign taped to the mailboxes said half of them were broken. Marcus hesitated, then walked inside. The hallway smelled like mildew and old cooking grease. He climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, then the 3rd, reading the apartment numbers. Most of the doors were closed, some with additional locks hastily installed, others with signs that said things like "No soliciting" or "Beware of dog." He reached the 4th floor and found apartment 7 at the end of the hall. The door was scarred and dented, the paint chipped away in places. There was no sound from inside. Marcus knocked. Nothing. He knocked again, harder this time. He heard movement, footsteps, then a voice, rough and suspicious. "Who is it?" "My name is Marcus. I'm sorry to bother you, but I found a cat with a collar that has this address on it. I'm trying to find out where it came from." Silence. Then the sound of locks being undone. 3 of them. The door opened a crack, and an elderly woman peered out. She was thin, with gray hair pulled back in a bun, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "A cat?" she said. "Yes, ma'am. A gray tabby with white patches. The collar says Whiskers." The woman's expression changed, softening for just a moment before her face closed off again. That cat's been gone for over a year. I don't know where you found it, but it's not mine anymore. I work nights near the industrial district. The cat's been following me. I just wanted to know if maybe it belonged to someone, if someone was looking for it. The woman studied him, then sighed and opened the door wider. Come in, but just for a minute. The apartment was small and cramped, filled with old furniture and stacks of papers. It was clean, though, or as clean as a place like this could be. The woman gestured for Marcus to sit on a worn couch. She didn't sit down herself. Whiskers belonged to my granddaughter, she said. Emma. She lived here with me for a while. The cat was hers. Where is she now? Marcus asked. The woman's jaw tightened. She's in a group home across town. I couldn't take care of her anymore. I got sick, couldn't work, and the state said I wasn't fit to be her guardian. They took her 2 years ago. She was 8. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What about her parents? Her mother's my daughter. She's got problems, drugs, and such. She's been in and out of rehab, in and out of jail. Emma's father was never in the picture. So it was just me and Emma, and then it was just me. The woman's voice wavered. I tried to keep her, but they said the apartment wasn't safe, that I didn't have enough money. They said she'd be better off with other kids, people who could take care of her properly. And the cat? When they came to get Emma, it all happened so fast. The social workers, the police. Emma was crying, holding onto Whiskers, but they said she couldn't take the cat. I promised her I'd keep it, that she could come visit. But then I got sicker. Ended up in the hospital for a while. When I came back, Whiskers was gone. I figured it ran off, maybe looking for Emma. Cats do that sometimes, I heard. Marcus's throat felt tight. Do you still see Emma? The woman looked away. I tried at first. I'd take the bus over to the home, but they have rules about visitation. You have to schedule it, and sometimes they'd cancel. Emma would be upset, crying, and they said it was making things harder for her, that she needed to adjust. So they asked me to stop coming so often. I haven't seen her in 6 months. I call sometimes, but they say she's busy or she doesn't want to talk. I don't know what to believe. Marcus sat forward. Which group home? What's it called? The woman hesitated. Why do you want to know? Because the cat found me for a reason. Maybe it wants me to find Emma. The woman's eyes filled with tears. It's called Riverside Youth Center. It's over on Morton Avenue near the bridge. But they won't let you just walk in. You have to have a reason. Marcus stood up. I'll find a reason. Does Emma know about Whiskers? Does she know the cat is still out there? She asked about him every time I saw her. I told her he was fine, that he was waiting for her. I didn't know what else to say. Marcus took out his phone. Can I give you my number? If I find a way to see Emma, I'll let you know. The woman nodded, and Marcus wrote his number on a scrap of paper from his pocket. As he left the apartment, he felt the weight of what he'd just learned pressing down on him. A little girl, separated from her grandmother and her cat, stuck in a system that was supposed to help, but instead felt like another kind of abandonment. He thought about Scout, or Whiskers, following him night after night. Had the cat been searching all this time? It seemed impossible, but then again, he'd heard stories about animals finding their way across incredible distances. Maybe the cat hadn't found Emma, but it had found someone who could. Marcus didn't go home. He drove across town to Morton Avenue, following the directions on his phone. Riverside Youth Center was a large, institutional-looking building set back from the street, surrounded by a fence. It looked more like a hospital than a home. There was a parking lot in front and a small playground to the side, empty even though it was the weekend. Marcus parked and sat in his truck, staring at the building. He didn't know what he was going to do. He couldn't just walk in and ask to see a random kid. He wasn't family. He wasn't anyone. But he thought about the cat, waiting for him every night. He thought about the grandmother, alone in that dark apartment, unable to see her granddaughter. He thought about Emma, 10 years old now, in a place that felt like a cage. And he thought about himself, drifting through life without purpose, without connection. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the thing he'd been waiting for without knowing it. Marcus started calling. He called the main number for Riverside and explained that he was trying to reach a resident named Emma. They asked who he was, and he said he was a friend of the family. They said they couldn't give out information about residents without proper authorization. He called the Department of Child Services and got transferred 5 times before someone told him he'd need to file a request in writing. He spent the rest of the weekend researching, reading about group homes, about the foster care system, about how hard it was to navigate when you weren't a social worker or a lawyer. On Monday, Marcus did something he hadn't done in years. He called in sick to work. He drove back to Oak Street and knocked on the grandmother's door again. She opened it, surprised to see him. "Did you find her?" she asked. "Not yet, but I need your help. I need you to write a letter saying that you want me to check on Emma, that you're giving me permission as her grandmother to visit her on your behalf." The woman looked uncertain. "I don't know if that'll work. They don't listen to me." "Maybe they will if we both try. You have rights as her grandmother, and I have time. I can keep pushing." The woman invited him in, and they spent the next hour drafting a letter. Marcus found templates online, and the grandmother signed it, adding Emma's full name and date of birth. Marcus made copies and then drove back to Riverside. This time, he walked into the front office and asked to speak to the director. The receptionist said he needed an appointment. Marcus said he'd wait. He sat in the lobby for 3 hours until a tired-looking woman in her 50s came out and asked what he wanted. Marcus explained the situation. He showed her the letter from Emma's grandmother, the photo of the cat collar, and his own ID. The director listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she sighed. "Mr. Marcus, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but we have protocols. Emma has a caseworker who handles all her visitation. If her grandmother wants to arrange something, she needs to go through the proper channels." Her grandmother tried. She was told to stop visiting because it was upsetting Emma. But what if Emma is upset because she misses her grandmother? What if she thinks no one cares about her anymore? The director's face softened slightly. "I can't discuss Emma's case with you, privacy laws. But I can tell you that we do our best for every child here. It's not easy. These kids have been through trauma, and sometimes the people who love them have also caused them harm, even unintentionally. We have to be careful." Marcus leaned forward. "I'm not asking you to break any rules. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe this little girl needs to know that someone is still looking for her, that her cat is still out there, that she hasn't been forgotten." The director studied him for a long moment. Then she stood up. "I'll talk to Emma's caseworker. I'm not promising anything, but I'll see what I can do. Leave your contact information with the front desk." Marcus did, and then he left, feeling both frustrated and oddly hopeful. He drove back to work that night, and Scout was waiting for him as always. Marcus scooped the cat up and held it close. "I'm trying, buddy," he whispered. "I'm trying to get you home." 3 days later, Marcus's phone rang while he was sleeping during the day. It was a number he didn't recognize. He answered groggily. "Hello? Mr. Marcus, this is Sandra Chen. I'm Emma's caseworker at Riverside. Director Patterson asked me to call you." Marcus sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Yes. Thank you for calling. I've reviewed your request and spoken with Emma's grandmother. I've also spoken with Emma. She remembers her cat and has been asking about him. Given the unique circumstances, and with her grandmother's consent, I'm willing to arrange a supervised visit. But I need to be clear. This is not a promise of anything beyond one meeting. If it goes well, and Emma wants to continue contact, we can discuss next steps. If it causes her distress, it stops immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes, absolutely. When can I see her?" "Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Bring the cat if you can. I think it'll help her feel more comfortable." Marcus spent the next 2 days preparing. He bathed Scout carefully, combing out the mats in its fur, trimming its nails. He bought a new collar and a small carrier. He barely slept, running through what he'd say, how he'd explain who he was, and why he'd come. When Saturday arrived, he put on his best jeans and a clean shirt, feeling more nervous than he'd felt in years. He arrived at Riverside at 1:45 and checked in at the front desk. Sandra Chen met him in the lobby, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked at the carrier in his hand. "That's the cat?" "Yes. His name is Whiskers, but I've been calling him Scout." "Let's keep it Whiskers for now. Emma will recognize that name." Sandra led him through a series of hallways to a small room with a couch, a table, and some chairs. It was decorated to look friendly, with posters of animals and inspirational quotes on the walls, but it still felt institutional. "Wait here. I'll get Emma. Remember, let her lead the conversation. Don't push." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding. He set the carrier on the floor and opened the door, letting Whiskers out. The cat sniffed around the room, then jumped up on the couch next to Marcus. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Sandra came in with a little girl. Emma was small for 10, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail and large brown eyes that looked guarded and wary. She was wearing a faded sweatshirt and jeans. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Marcus. Then her eyes went to the cat. Her entire face changed. "Whiskers," she whispered. The cat's ears perked up. Whiskers jumped off the couch and walked toward Emma, meowing. Emma dropped to her knees, and the cat went straight to her, rubbing against her legs. Emma's hands were shaking as she reached out to pet him. "Whiskers," she said again, and then she was crying, scooping the cat into her arms and burying her face in its fur. Marcus felt his own eyes burn. Sandra touched his arm gently, then stepped back to give them space. Emma sat on the floor, holding Whiskers, rocking back and forth. The cat purred loudly, kneading its paws against her shirt. After a long moment, Emma looked up at Marcus. "Where did you find him?" Marcus sat down on the floor across from her, keeping his distance. "He found me, actually. I work nights as a security guard, and he started following me about a month ago. I didn't know who he belonged to at first, but then I found his collar. It had your grandmother's address on it." Emma's voice was small. "You know my grandma?" "I do. I went to see her. She told me about you, about Whiskers. She misses you a lot." Emma's face crumpled. "I miss her too. They won't let me see her." Sandra stepped in gently. "Emma, that's not exactly true. Your grandmother can visit, but it has to be scheduled. We talked about this." "But you always cancel," Emma said, her voice rising. "You say she's not coming or I have to do therapy or something. And she stopped calling. Everyone stops." Marcus looked at Sandra, who looked pained. "Emma, your grandmother hasn't stopped caring about you. She's been trying to see you. Sometimes grown-ups make things harder than they need to be, but she asked me to bring Whiskers to you because she wanted you to know she remembers. She remembers you and loves you." Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve, still holding the cat. "Can I keep him? Can he stay here with me?" Sandra shook her head. "You know we can't have pets here, sweetheart. It's in the rules. But he's mine. He's always been mine." Marcus's chest ached. He spoke carefully. "Emma, what if I keep taking care of Whiskers for you, and I bring him to visit you? Would that be okay?" Emma looked at him uncertain. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "Because Whiskers wants to be with you, and because I think you deserve to have someone who shows up. I know what it's like to feel forgotten. I don't want you to feel that way." Emma studied him with those serious eyes, and Marcus could see her weighing whether to trust him. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but you have to promise. You have to promise you'll come back." "I promise," Marcus said, and he meant it. They spent the next hour together. Emma told Marcus about school, about the other kids in the home, about how she missed her grandmother's cooking, and the way their old apartment smelled like cinnamon. She told him how Whiskers used to sleep at the foot of her bed, and how she'd read books to him. Marcus listened, really listened. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. When the visit ended, Emma hugged Whiskers one more time, then carefully placed him back in the carrier. She looked at Marcus. "You really promise?" "I really promise." As Marcus left Riverside, Sandra walked with him to the parking lot. "That was good," she said. "Emma doesn't open up like that with most people. You did well." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we see if this is sustainable. If you're serious about regular visits, we can set up a schedule. And I'll work with Emma's grandmother to make sure she can see her too. But Mr. Marcus, I need you to understand something. Emma has been let down by a lot of people in her life. If you make a promise to her and you don't keep it, it'll hurt her more than if you'd never come at all." "I understand. I'll be here, whatever it takes." Sandra nodded. "Then I'll be in touch." Marcus drove home with Whiskers in the carrier on the seat next to him. He felt exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. When he got to his apartment, he let Whiskers out and sat on the couch, the cat curling up beside him. "We did it, buddy," he said. "We found her." Over the next few months, Marcus's life transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined. He visited Emma every week, bringing Whiskers each time. The visits got longer, more relaxed. Emma started to smile more, to talk about things that mattered to her. Marcus started learning about her world, about the challenges she faced in the group home, the kids who bullied her, the staff who tried to help but were overwhelmed. He advocated for her, calling Sandra when something wasn't right, pushing for better support. He also reconnected Emma with her grandmother. Together they coordinated visits so that Emma could see her grandmother regularly again. The first time they were all together, Emma sat between them on a bench outside Riverside, holding Whiskers, and for a moment it felt like a family. Not a perfect family, not the kind anyone would have planned, but a real one. Marcus learned about the foster care system, about how many kids were stuck in limbo, waiting for someone to care enough to fight for them. He started volunteering at Riverside, helping with activities, getting to know other kids. He wasn't a social worker or a counselor, but he was steady, reliable. He showed up. One evening in late spring, almost 6 months after that first visit, Sandra called Marcus. "I wanted to give you an update," she said. "Emma's doing really well. Her behavior reports are good, her grades have improved, and her therapist says she's making progress. A lot of that is because she has consistent support now. You and her grandmother have made a real difference." "That's great," Marcus said, feeling a swell of pride. "There's something else," Sandra continued. "Emma's grandmother's health has stabilized. She's been working with a housing advocate and is moving to a better apartment next month, one that meets state standards. She's also been attending parenting classes, even though Emma isn't technically her child, because she wants to prove she can provide a stable home. We're reviewing the possibility of reunification." Marcus's heart skipped. "Reunification? You mean Emma could go back to live with her grandmother?" "It's not guaranteed and it'll take time. There will be home visits, evaluations, a trial period. But if everything goes well, yes. Emma could be home by the end of the year." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "That's incredible." "It is. And Mr. Marcus, you should know that Emma considers you part of her family now. She talks about you all the time. When she talks about going home, she asks if you'll still visit her there. I hope that's something you'd be open to." "Of course," Marcus said. "Absolutely." When Marcus told Emma the news during their next visit, she threw her arms around him, something she'd never done before. "I'm going home," she whispered. "I'm really going home." "You are," Marcus said, holding her tight, "and Whiskers will be there waiting for you." The process took longer than anyone hoped, full of paperwork and setbacks and moments of doubt. But Marcus stayed constant. He visited Emma, supported her grandmother, made sure Whiskers was cared for. He learned patience, learned to navigate systems that seemed designed to frustrate rather than help. And he learned something else too. He learned that he wasn't meant to be alone. He'd spent so many years drifting, thinking his life was set, that this was all there was. But Whiskers had shown him a different path, one where connection mattered, where showing up mattered. In December, almost 14 months after that first night when a cat had followed him home from work, Marcus stood in a small apartment on Oak Street, watching as Emma walked through the door for the first time in over 2 years. Her grandmother was there, crying and laughing at the same time. Whiskers was there too, meowing and running circles around Emma's legs. And Marcus was there, holding a grocery bag full of Emma's favorite snacks, feeling like he'd finally found his place in the world. Emma looked around the apartment, which her grandmother had filled with familiar things and new things, a mixture of memory and hope. Then she looked at Marcus. "Thank you," she said, "for keeping your promise." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for letting me." That night, as Marcus drove home from his security guard shift, the sunrise painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, he thought about everything that had changed. He'd gone from a man who barely spoke to anyone to someone who was woven into the lives of a little girl and her grandmother. He'd learned that family wasn't just about blood or legal ties. It was about who showed up, who stayed, who kept their promises even when it was hard. The city was waking up around him, people heading to work, kids walking to school. Marcus smiled, feeling the warmth of belonging settle in his chest. He'd been found, just as much as Emma had been. And it had all started with a stray cat who refused to give up, who kept searching until it found someone willing to listen, willing to care. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered whether your life can change, remember this. Sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness, one moment of paying attention to something others might overlook. Marcus wasn't a hero. He was just a man who noticed a cat, who followed a clue, who decided that someone else's story mattered more than his own comfort. And in doing so, he became part of something bigger than himself. We all have that capacity, to see the forgotten, to reach out, to make a difference. Sometimes it starts with something as simple as a stray cat following you home. The question is, will you follow it back? If this story moved you, if it reminded you that connection and compassion can change everything, please consider subscribing to our channel. Every story we share is about real human experiences, about the moments that transform us when we're brave enough to let them. Join our community, and let's keep finding these stories together.